You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Joe today. Joe is a listener of the show, has experienced some really interesting things in different states among the years. But thank you for coming on the show today, Joe. How's it going, sir?
You're welcome. It's going great. It's a very nice day here in Missouri.
Absolutely. You know, I'm excited to hear more about what you've experienced. I know we'll be talking about some different states that usually have some really interesting things happen in those states. So feel free, Joe, to take us back as far as you need to when you started to have some of these interactions with Bigfoot.
Okay, so we'll start with Arkansas because that was pretty much the very first state. I was born on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, but I've lived most of my life in central Arkansas. So we had a bunch of us were truck drivers at the time. So there's like 7 of us that decided to lease some property from a paper company in north central Arkansas up in the Ozarks. And we leased, it was right at 500 acres of land. And I don't really want to say where that's at because we still have that lease, and I don't want anybody trying to go in there and then get hurt and then try to sue. It's kind of a legal thing. You can understand that. But so north central Arkansas, we hunted there for years, and I was what they called a rescue driver. So I would sit at home with my truck for weeks on end. If somebody's truck broke down, I might run all the way to California and pick up their trailer and deliver their load from them. So I only worked, maybe 1 or 2 weeks a month. So I would go up to this property and I would stay there for weeks at a time by myself. I bow hunted. I was an avid bow hunter, deer hunter. Everything was great. This property we had was a pine forest on top of a mountain in the Ozarks. We had 2 very nice creeks at the bottom of the mountains. Just beautiful. They were full of little stream bass and brim and stuff like that. You could go fish. We would go camp in the summertime. Never had any issues. I would love to be up there by myself and just camp out. Well, then they started putting in natural gas pipelines, and that's kind of when things got started. So right outside of our main gate, there's a natural fire break, a trail, that I went up there one weekend in October. This was in 2014. And I'm going up there to make sure everybody's ready for deer season. I'm off. They're on the road. They're all over the country. So I go put corn in their feeders, make sure their stands are good. And I'm up there by myself with a bow. And I go down this one fire break that borders our property, and I notice there's like these 3 really large rocks stacked on top of each other right in the middle of the path. And I thought that was odd. I was like, somebody's trying to sneak in on our property, and they're using this as a marker on where they need to turn and go into their stand. But as I look to the right, there's an old oak tree that had been falling down probably for 10 or 12 years, just laying on the ground. I'm like, why would somebody need a marker when all they have to do is walk down the trail and see the old oak tree so they know where to turn? It didn't make any sense. So I kind of took my foot and I pushed over those stacked rocks. And I went on and checked everybody's stands, and I went to where we had a campsite on the very top of the mountain. And I didn't even bring a tent. I was just going to sleep in my truck for the night. But I made a small campfire, made me a sandwich, pulled out a bag of chips, eat my dinner, and I was just about ready to go to bed. And the most god-awful scream you ever heard come from, like, I think it come from where those pipelines teed together, because it made like an interstate through the mountains, through the woods. And every hair on my body raised up. I've never heard anything like that before, especially not out there. I put my campfire out, I got in my truck, and I left, because I'm thinking, I'm out here all by myself with a bow and arrow. Nobody knows where I'm at. I'm way out in the middle of these mountains. So I leave. I go find a hotel at one of the closest towns to it. And I stay in my hotel all night, and I say I'm not going back there until daylight. So at daylight, I got up, I drove back to camp. One of our friends, just so we won't give his name away, I'll call him Bob. One of the guys that came in during the middle of the night with his camper trailer, and he usually brings the camper trailer in around October and then doesn't take it out until December. Well, on my way in to hunt, I noticed that his camper trailer was there, so he must be on a stand. I went and hunted that morning unsuccessfully. I didn't see anything. As I'm coming back out, I noticed he's at his camper, so I stopped and talked to him. And I tell him about what I heard the night before. And he's like, it's funny you should mention that. He goes, last year when nobody was up here and I was here by myself, I was laying in my camper, and it sounded like a freight train came through the woods, and it stopped right at the back of my camper, and I never heard another noise. He's the only one that doesn't laugh at me about believing at Bigfoot. But so to get back to my story, 2 weekends later, Arkansas has a special modern arms season. It's only like for one weekend, and it's just to kill a doe. It's kind of like a deprivation hunt. So me and a friend decide we're going to go up there and we're going to try to kill some meat for the freezer before the actual season opens. So this time we have his tent, and it's like a Coleman pop-up tent, cabin tent. So at the very center of it, it's like 6 foot tall. So you can stand up in it and get dressed, but it sets up really quick and tears down really quick. So we had set this tent up, and we went out scouting around and picked out where we wanted to hunt for the next morning. Well, we had rain moving in. It was very cloudy that night, and it was supposed to rain the next day, but we wanted to hunt the morning before the strong storms got there. So once again, built a little campfire. We had a radio on. And then we got ready. We were like, okay, let's go to bed and get some rest. We got to get up early and go hunting. We put out the campfire. We both crawled into the tent. And I'm right there on that edge of sleep. You know, you get to where that edge of sleep where you're not completely asleep, but you're not awake either. And I felt him tap my legs. And I was like, what? And he goes, shh, listen. And whenever I came awake, I could hear this guttural breathing. It wasn't growling. It was like a really fat, drunk guy snoring almost. I mean, I can't describe it the way this breathing was. But every time it breathed out, it rattled my chest. I could feel it in my chest. And it was maybe 10 foot behind our tent. But you know how you can hear when someone is talking from the left or the right or over you. This thing was above our tent. It was taller than our tent. And it must have had the biggest chest cavity of anything I've ever heard. It was not a bear. If it had to have been a bear, it had to have been like one of those Yukon Gold giant brown bears or something, and it had to have been standing up on its feet. Both of our weapons were still in my truck in bags, unloaded. Like I said, it was very cloudy. Rain was coming in. It was very dark. There was no moon. There was no stars. And we're just laying there in pitch dark blackness. The only thing I could think was I had a pocket knife. And so I pulled my pocket knife out and I opened it up. And I had a death grip on that pocket knife, and I laid it on my chest. I said, well, if this thing's going to get us, it's not going to go down without a fight. I've never been so scared of anything in my entire life. At the time, I was 43 years old. I've never heard anything like that, and it's right there. It's right outside the tent. So about 15 or 20 minutes goes by. It never touches the tent. It never throws anything at us. It never makes any noise other than the breathing. And then you slowly start to hear the breathing going away, like it's walking away. And it's a pine forest, so there's pine needles are covered the ground, so it's not like you have dry leaves where you can hear footprints walking away. It just kind of disappears. And we end up falling asleep. Somewhere around 4 or 5 a.m., I wake up. I have to go to the bathroom. So I just do what I normally do. I throw my cover off of me and I start crawling towards the edge of the tent. And I'm just about to unzip the tent when I realize I still have the knife in my hand. And that brings back, okay, what just happened? And so I freeze and I just start listening to everything around me. And I can hear the breathing again, but it's not behind our tent. It sounds like it's across the logging road that we drove in on. And I know what's across that road. It's kind of like a small thicket, very thick, dense brush growed up, and it sounded like it was behind that. And so once again, I told myself I am not getting out of this tent until daylight, until I can see what is going on, especially without a gun in my hand. So somehow I managed to lay back down and go to sleep. The next thing I know, the sun was up, and I wake up and I look at my friend, and he's waking up, and we just kind of look at each other. We crawl over, unzip the tent. The first thing we do is run to the truck, grab both of our rifles, load them up, and then we use the bathroom. We hunted that morning unsuccessfully. Did not see any deer whatsoever again, which is unusual for that place. The rain started picking up and storms were moving in, so we went back and we broke down that campsite and left. And on our way out, the only thing I ever said to him was, "You know that wasn't a bear, right?" And he said, "Yeah." But he was still kind of in shock because I don't think he's ever been a believer in these things. So that was Arkansas, and we still have that property there, although the paper company has come in. They cut down the pine trees about 3 years ago, and they planted new ones. There is still deer there, but I have not camped there or been back since my incident. Well, I went back one time in the daylight to drive around and see where they cut everything down, but we moved to Idaho a couple of months after that, and I was lucky enough I got to go to, I live just north of Pocatello, Idaho, so I got to meet Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Cliff Brockman at one of the Bigfoot conferences there in Pocatello. It was a great day, and I talked with Dr. Jeff Meldrum about the stacked rocks and things, and he is very, very smart, very scientific. He applies the scientific method to everything. And when I talked to him about the stacked rocks, he was like, "Well, can you prove that Bigfoot stacked those up?" And I go, "No, I cannot." And he goes, "That's right. We can't prove that Bigfoot stacks rocks. We can't prove that they make structures. We can't prove anything because we don't have somebody like Jane Goodall to go out there and, live with a family of them and watch them." And the scientific method says that we have to witness this behavior in them to be able to know that they were the ones who did it. Although I don't know anyone else who would do it, but that's just science. Just because you believe a man murdered somebody does not mean he did unless you actually seen it or have proof. So then the very next year, after I got to meet with them and talk to them, a deer hunting trip I had in Idaho, once again, I'm by myself out in the middle of the mountains. So I've always noticed these deer where I fish at up on the mountain, so I decided, hey, I'll give that a try and see if there's anything there in the fall. So I parked at my fishing spot on the Snake River, very beautiful, heavy trout river. I left my truck and just started walking up the mountain. I got up to a ridge that I could oversee that had a small, what would you call it? It was like a small creek coming out of the side of the mountain, just a little bit of water, and it looked like deer had been in there using that for water instead of going down to the river. And I looked up on the ridge, and there was a white-tailed buck up there. I was like, man, I got in here too late because I don't go into the woods at dark anymore. But the deer, he cuts over into this heavy stuff, and I'm like, well, maybe there's a trail up there. So I walked up, and sure enough, there's a big game trail up there. And I started following the game trail to the west, walking right along the side of the mountain. I came upon the track that I sent you the picture of, and I wasn't even sure if it was a real track or not. And then I took about 5 more steps, and I come out into this wash in between 2 mountains where the snow melt and all the rain runs down. And that's what you'll see on the picture of the tree. And it's really hard packed, mostly rock, a lot of sagebrush, things like that. But then I seen this tree, and it has a limb ripped off of it. It's a completely green live tree. If you've ever built a campfire, you know you can break dead sticks. They break right away, but if you break a green one, the bark doesn't just break. You got to kind of like strip it off. And that's what I was seeing on this tree limb. And it wasn't, 15 yards away from the print that I seen. And I walked up to the tree, and curiosity had got the best of me. So I started doing circles around the tree, looking for that tree limb. And I'm thinking, what could have broke it off? It could, even if it was a storm, it would have just snapped off, and it would still be hanging by some of that green bark, or, maybe somebody walked up this way and broke it off and threw it down. But I walked circles around that tree up to about 20 yards out. I never found that tree limb. And if you look at the picture, taking a picture of it going up the mountain, which is that wash has turned into another main game trail. It's easier for the elk and the deer to move up and down the mountain through that than climbing over all the rock. It gets really dense and dark up there. And I started thinking to myself, I've heard of them building structures and bedding and stuff. Maybe it tore this limb off and took it up there. But here we go again. I'm by myself in the middle of the mountains, and no one knows where I'm at. So I did not pursue it any farther. I turned and walked down the wash back to the logging road coming in beside the river and went back to my truck.
Joe, real quick, I'm looking at the photo right now, but how tall off the ground would you estimate that break to be?
That break was probably about 6.5 foot. It would be easy for me to reach up there and grab that limb, but it was about 2 inches in diameter. I don't think I could have snapped that off.
It is definitely a sizable branch. I would agree with you on that estimate of how wide around it is. And you can see the trail pretty close to it too.
Yeah, and the footprint was actually pointed in that direction where I came out onto that wash. It was like right on the side of it. It was like the only possible place you could have actually made a footprint was right there, because everything else was either overgrown or it was rock. It was like that was the only place that had a little bit of uncompacted dirt. You know what I mean? And I'll put it on social media, and I've got slammed for it. Like, why is there only one print? Oh, it looks like a cow, or it could have been a bear double step. I'm not saying it's Bigfoot. It just got my curiosity aroused. Why it was there, and then, you know, a few yards from it, I have this tree with this limb ripped off. I don't know.
It is very weird. And you said on the Snake River, right?
Yes. It was right outside of Palisades Reservoir. We live not far from there. We live like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes from Yellowstone Park. We lived right there by Wyoming and Montana line. So if you bring up Palisades Reservoir, it's going to be right there on the Wyoming line.
Oh, absolutely. Because you've got Palisades, but then you've also got Swan Valley right there, right?
Yep. And this was to the south of Swan Valley. There's a dirt road that goes up on the south side of the Snake River there at Swan Valley. And it was off to the south on one of those. Before you get to the river. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. This location has come up on the show before. It was back in episode 814. There were a ton of accounts that were shared. There's been a lot of things that have happened around Palisades Reservoir over the years, going back to late 90s, sightings and tracks and multiple tracks, screams, roars, being growled at. So I am not actually even things that sounded like the Sierra sounds. So I'm not surprised that if that's where you're, doing your hunting, that you're finding stuff like that. I mean, it is a really active spot in Idaho.
I wish I would have known that while I lived there. I might would have done a little bit more investigating.
Right. There you go. There you go. I mean, yeah, you never know. That's why I've been trying to put this map together I have on my website of all like the different encounters I've taken over the years. Because like some places you would have no idea unless you have access to the information.
This place in Idaho, I mean, you have... this is a very popular trout fishing location.
Okay.
You have like homes that are along that dirt road. You have, people's vacation homes. They have, trout hunters and lodges and stuff like that. And the footprint and the tree was like, I don't know, maybe a quarter of a mile behind them. I mean, you wouldn't think it would be that close to civilization, but it is.
Absolutely. It is weird when you start to see stuff in civilized area, but it's I don't think it's out of the question for sure. Did you when you lived in that area, did you ever talk to any neighbors to see if they had ever seen any weird stuff or things like that around the reservoir?
I do, and I have stickers on my truck, and sometimes I've got a big tattoo on the back of my leg of Bigfoot, and people stop to me and talk to me, and that's why I do it, so that I can learn things. Not everybody talks, like we are now. They don't. They're kind of scared that people are going to laugh at them. I don't care if people laugh at me. I'm not saying that it's 100% true. Asking a question. What did you run into? What happened to you? And I have had several people talk to me about their experiences. Some of them in Idaho. One guy that I actually worked with said that something threw a rock at his head about the size of a softball, and it hit a tree right in front of him. And it hit so hard that it sounded like a gun going off. And he got scared and ran out of there and got back to his truck and left, and he's never been back. He also had extremely good pictures on his phone of a trackway that he found in Washington where his parents lived. And I thought that was very interesting. So, not really sure. Like I said, I'm telling you what happened to me. And as far as the one in Arkansas goes, like I said, I've never been more scared of anything in my life, but it didn't try to attack me. It didn't do anything. It was like it was more curious than anything. It just kind of stood behind the tent and watched stuff. And the odd thing is we had a lot of raccoons there in Arkansas, big ones. They would run up and steal the chips out of your hand while you were eating them. They were brave. But my buddy had left an open bag of Cheetos on the chair when we went to bed, and part of the sandwich. Nothing came to our campground that night and took anything. If it would have been a bear, I could see it stealing food. Raccoons, yeah. But nothing was touched. Even when we went and hunted the next morning and come back and broke the camp down, everything was still there. There had been no animals around our campground for that entire time.
You know, bringing up the Arkansas situation, I did have a few questions for you about that. And I know it sounded like you weren't really in the mindset that next morning to go looking around at stuff just because you were like, get the weapon, use the facilities, right? But did you notice like anything out of the ordinary, like any tracks on the ground, or that was just totally out of your mind?
Well, I did try to look for something around the campground, but it's a pine forest. And like I said, everything is completely covered with pine needles. So you really don't get any like crushed down brush or footprints in the mud or anything like that. It's just a really thick layer of dead pine needles. So that being said, we wouldn't really hanging out that much, you know, to do that much looking. We kind of loaded our rifles, got in the truck, drove on down to the other end of our camp, and hunted a little bit until it started raining, and then we come back, just broke everything down and left as quick as possible.
Gotcha. When you were there during that time, besides the very just the strange breathing noise, did you guys hear any other sounds that didn't really fit the area? Anything else strange that you were hearing?
Yeah, there was nothing. Nothing. No birds, no frogs, no crickets. Everything was completely silent except for that. And I've been asked, well, did you see a shadow on the tent? Well, no, because the moon wasn't out, the stars wasn't out, it was cloudy. It was like laying in pitch darkness, just listening to something right behind you, and that's all you can hear.
Wow. At any time, were there any trees or stick breaks, or maybe trees sounded like trees fell, anything like that?
No, nothing. No coyotes, and we have a lot of coyotes up there. And usually as soon as the sun goes down, you can hear the packs running, chasing rabbits or whatever they're doing. We heard nothing whatsoever.
Wow. So it sounds like the way you're explaining it, it sounds like you're in that that overpowering silence where it's like so there's nothing, and it just, I don't know if you've ever experienced that where it's like it's hard to think because it is so quiet.
Yeah, and as I was panicked, I really was, and I was gripping that pocket knife, and I don't understand how I fell asleep because, I mean, almost as immediately as we stopped hearing it, I was out. I fell asleep and I didn't wake up until I needed to go to the restroom. Most people would have been panicking and go, okay, it's gone. Let's get in our truck. Let's go. We fell asleep and slept the whole night.
That is the thing. You hear that a lot in these, and it's just one of those weird things you just cannot explain. Not even any owls in the area.
No, nothing.
That's a freaky night, dude. My goodness. Wow. So you've had that in Arkansas, and then the things you found in Idaho. Is that the last time that you've experienced anything out of the ordinary, or have there been things where you are currently as well?
Well, I haven't been able to get back out there here lately. The past couple of years, they've had to put me on disability. I was an iron worker and a welder and everything. My back's gotten bad. Hopefully, the end of September, I'll get my last back surgery so that I can get back out there. And so I haven't been able to hunt or do anything like that in a couple of years. But I'm hoping to get back out there. We still have that property in Arkansas. The guys are wanting me to come back down and hunt with them. After I get my back surgery, I'm hoping next year I will actually be able to get back down there into Arkansas. And this time it's not just going to be hunting for deer, it's going to be looking and seeing if there's any signs or, you go through stuff like that. It makes you look at things differently. It really does. I used to love the woods. I would be on my tree stand at least a half hour before daylight, and it's just magic out in the woods. You hear the birds wake up, the squirrels start coming down. Right at daylight, the forest starts waking up, all the animals are getting out. It's purely magic. Yeah, I don't do that anymore. I am not going into the woods unless it's daylight. I have to be able to see what's around me. I really do. I get scared. The woods aren't the same anymore, not like they used to be. And I think if people ever experience anything like I did, they're not going to be the same for you either. You're going to look at them differently.
It's a weird experience. I think it's hard for people to understand that until they get in a situation like you've been in where you experience that thing that is just extremely strange and has just affected the rest of your life. Now, is it okay to mention where your current state is?
Yes.
Okay. So
we just recently moved to Jefferson City, Missouri.
Gotcha. So you're down in Missouri now. You have the tattoo on the back of your leg. You can't really get rid of that. So you have at least some form of a Bigfoot following you around. Have you gotten people down there that have been like, "Hey, I've had stuff happen down here too"?
Yes, absolutely. I went to the Ozarks Bigfoot conference last year. I was hoping to go again this year, but just with medical conditions, I just can't get down there. But that was in Springfield, Missouri last year. And I talked to one other guy that was in the audience, and he was kind of a believer, but he didn't know what to believe. And I talked to him in the audience, and he said that he was there. He got elected from his small town in South Missouri to come there and learn about it because they had so many occurrences there. Like they've seen them coming out of their sheds and their barns and stuff and running off into the woods. And I was trying to talk to him. I told him my story a little bit. And then they sent everybody to lunch. Well, when we come back from lunch, I really wanted to talk to him and find out what town this was, but he had left and he didn't come back. I've also ran into people at grocery stores and things like that will say, oh, you know, you a Bigfoot hunter? And I'll go, well, I'm kind of a researcher, or what do you got? And they'll tell me, you know, one time when I was a kid, this happened. And so, yeah, it's a great way to meet people. And I believe the most important thing we can do as far as researchers or Bigfoot community is listen to what other people have seen done. Like I say, we're not going to get to go out there and live with a family of Bigfoot and see what they do and record it all down. So our best information comes from people like me, people that have seen something, they've had something happen to them, and then maybe somebody on your show hears about it and go, hey, you know what, that happened to me too. And so maybe they'll make a report of it. And so we can start gathering this information up little by little and go, hey, this guy over here in St. Louis said this, and that matches the same thing with this guy over in Pennsylvania. Or, you know, I mean, that's how we're getting our information of how they behave and what they do.
I think that's a great idea. And the other interesting thing is, I mean, there are people that say they have, I mean, that they are, I guess, not to the extent of Dr. Jane Goodall, but that they have them on their property and that it's like a habituation thing going on. But yeah, it's interesting when you listen to all the accounts, you know, and maybe not kick some to the side, right? And as you were saying, you know, kind of listen to everything that's going out there at all parts of the U.S. and actually the world, really. I mean, there's stuff we can hear from other countries that applies to the U.S. situation as well. But
yeah, I mean, there's just those little small things that somebody might tell you a story of something they've seen, and there's one little small part of it that matches with somebody else's story, and it matches with somebody else's story, and so that we can get to build a picture of it. I mean, like you would do if you were, say, a murder investigator and you went out and interviewed everybody and you found that one little thing that ties everything together. And that's kind of what I think is. I love listening to people's stories. I really love hearing their sightings because it gives us just that one little bit more of information every day.
Absolutely, Joe. And that's part of why I do what I do too. The main part is to give people a place to share where they don't have to worry about, you know, being made fun of or anything like that. But it is also, it's a learning experience for me as well. But, you know, it has been fun talking to you this afternoon, Joe. I want to make sure that, you know, you were able to share everything that you came on the show to share today.
Yeah, I think that's about it. I'm just ready to get surgery done. I'm ready to get back out there and put some boots on the ground and, you know, see what we can find next. Absolutely.
Well, once you're able to do so, and if you do run into some other things, you know, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you again and hear any updates further down the road. But thanks so much for coming on the show today, Joe.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.